Hello friends and music makers, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the world of minimal and micro house. We'll be creating a track from scratch using only stock Ableton Live devices and effects. So join me as we explore the key elements that define this genre, or genres in this case. We'll break down the process step by step, giving you the tools to craft signature chords, bass lines, and minimalist rhythms. As always, feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we'll learn and discover some new things together. My goal, as always, here is to help you level up your music production skills and unlock your creative potential. So, without further ado, let's run a couple of tests, make sure everything's working, and dive in and start crafting some minimal house. As always here on the channel, if you're new here or if you're returning, feel free to say hello in the chat, drop any comments as I said, or questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. So already we should have a microphone that should be running good. Let's do a little test of some music here, make sure the levels are fine, and this is sort of a good example of the direction we're heading today musically. So let's have a listen to this, check the levels, and then we'll start making some tunes. All right, so that should give you a little bit of a nice taster of what's to come today. That's the sort of style we're shooting for. That, by the way, was the demo for a sample pack that I created probably a few years ago now, that came out on Abstract Sounds. So this sort of genres, minimal house, micro house, genres that I'm very familiar with. So looking forward to making something in that style today for you boys and girls. So as far as I know, all the levels are working. If anyone's in the stream, if they give us a thumbs up, let me know, confirm. Hopefully microphone, music levels are good. So we're going to mute that track. That was just to test that stuff out. In fact, we can move it out the way. We don't need that anymore. Let's maybe crank our tempo up a bit today. These days it seems, well, everything's sped up in the last sort of 5 years or so, but I think a lot of house, minimal house, it's all around 128 BPM. So what are some of the characteristics of these genres? Bass lines, lots of drums, lots of groove. Banana Roch, did I pronounce that right? Hopefully. Let's go. All good. Fantastic. Also, good morning, Doorless House Music, if you're still there. So this genre, characteristically, lots of drums, sometimes just drums and a bass line, maybe a bit of vocals, sometimes more sort of deep with chords and pads. I think I'm going to go for a bit of music in mind, so some chords, some atmospheres, but there'll for sure be drums and action in that area. So maybe we'll start with the drums. We'll do a bit of traditional drum programming first. So let's get in just a simple kick pattern. Let's go for some sort of traditional-ish sounds in the sense of the samples we might use. So let's say we use some 808 drum sounds, or at least on the kick. Let's have a nice 808. I think I've got some good ones in here. We don't need it to be too big or boomy like that. It's probably 1 or 4 here, or 3 actually. Quite like this 3. What's 2? Yeah, so 3 I think. Let's start with that one. Just drop that down here into simpler. Let's get a 4 on the 4 kick happening. We could also have a drum rack, but we'll probably just do the sounds separately a little bit. So let's have 4 on the floor kick. Nice punchy 808. Spread that out a bit. Let's have some ghost notes. Just a bit of extra groove. And the more we extend this out, the more we can kind of think about little moves. Just keep even our kick pattern a little bit fresh, right? That it's not constantly kind of repeating. And there's all sorts of fun stuff we can do in Ableton Live, including also using our note chants down here, which is a great way. You really don't have any excuses anymore for boring patterns, even with kicks. So we could actually fill up a lot more kicks here and turn these kicks. Let's say maybe we make a little fill here, for example. And with this last note here, we'll just bring the chance of that happening down to, say, 30% or something. And that means every now and then this 4-bar loop is going to have that little fill, and a lot of the time it isn't. So it's a great way to kind of get already a little bit of variety and interest into your drum grooves. Let's just have a look at the envelope a bit. Keep it nice and tight. That's going to give us room for our bass. Okay, so that'll do for now. Let's now maybe jump straight into a bit of a snare or a clap, maybe. Yeah, we might have actually an 808 snare as well. So I'll just bring that over, bring that down. Let's get a simple pattern going. 2 and 4. We'll move that one along a bit. Let's get a bit of randomization into the velocity of those. And if you do open the chance lane, just make sure, just going to close it for a moment, that when you're making adjustments down here, if you've got both of them open, do make sure you know which one is highlighted. You can see when it's light blue over here, that means I'm focusing on that. So, you know, there's a few things we can do here. Adrian Dantas, Heath kicked off today's live stream at full power. Yeah, we're going in with a drum groove today, 808 style. So let's just bring this number down to a very small amount of velocity. I want this one softer. I'll do that manually. Let's try the note length. With your drum sounds, always play around with that, either the envelopes in the instruments themselves, getting down into here and shaping your sounds with the ADSR, or alternatively both, or playing with note lengths. You can hear the difference that makes, right, in terms of the groove, just with the simple kick. Let's turn the grid off in the back and we'll make this one a bit of a custom length. So again, we've got a little bit of variety in here. Let's try another one here perhaps. Put my grid back on. Command 4 if you're on a Mac. Move that one a little bit ahead of time. Okay, let's maybe also bust out a bit of swing, right? Again, minimal house, micro house, these kind of genres, they might have potentially a little bit of a swing. So let's turn on the groove pool. We can just use hot swap over here to bring it up in the browser over here. So hopefully my face and webcam isn't in the way. You can probably see that, I would hope. Let me know if there's any issues there. I think I'm here somewhere, so it shouldn't be too difficult to see what I've done. So I've just opened up the groove pool. Let's open it up here from the top of the browser so we can see it here. We can resize it a bit. And let's get a couple of 16th swings here and try them out early on for a bit of a groove perhaps. So maybe a Logic 16th swing, maybe 63, something like that. It's quite a lot of swing. Let's have an MPC one as well. Let's go for some similar sort of number, maybe 64. We might have a 57 or something around there just to have a comparison. So let's go back to the Logic, maybe just a straighter, right? So if you're familiar with grooves and swings, if you're not, drop a question in the chat and I can go a little bit deeper, but the lower the number, the more straighter and the less swung the groove will be if we use these, and the higher the number, the more groove and more swing. It's the percentage, so 57 is the percentage away from the grid that the even notes, 16th notes will be swung away from the grid, and the larger the note, and you can kind of hear it, the larger the number. We've got galloping horses here at 71, so it's very, very heavy swing versus almost straight. So with the Logic 16th swing, you can go as low as 51. It's almost hard to tell whether that's straight or swung, right? Pretty cool feature these days is this little box over here in the swing pool. I'll just turn on my info tab. If you hover over this little box that's yellow, it tells us auto load groove. Use the toggle to switch automatically applied grooves on and off. When enabled, a groove will automatically load into newly created MIDI clips. I quite like that feature, so you don't have to think. If you've chosen one of these, you can turn that little box on, and that means every time we open a MIDI clip or an audio clip, that swing is going to be in the background or in the groove. That's a pretty handy feature. Previously, you had to remember that. You also notice some of these are a bit different to the others, like the one in the middle. The MPC has no velocity difference, but the Logic one actually also adjusts the velocity as well as the groove. So keep an eye out for that as well, because obviously we can adjust all of these manually, these boxes, and make our own choices, but that to me is more a groove than just swing because of the fact that it also has velocity. All right, let's crack on. Let's have from the groove pool here, maybe the MPC. So that's much straighter. So I kind of like this MPC. I've already adjusted the velocity, so I'm going to leave the velocity at 0. But you know, if you want to play around with this, you can then until it gets really out of sync here with the grid, because it's adjusting, it's randomizing all of these parameters. If you want to tighten things up or loosen things up, you can do that here. So quantize at 0 is tight. As we go this way, we get looser. So depending on the genre you're doing, random, quantize, velocity, all fun stuff to play around with manually. Let's just do a little volume balance here. Nice. I do like that snare. It's kind of slapping, it's hitting nice and hard. Can also bring this groove pull down. I think I'm going to stick with the MPC for now. So wherever, and I've switched the little toggle on that I just mentioned. So that's going to pop up wherever I put a new clip in, and then we can decide if we're going to keep that swing or not. Just take a little bit low end off that. Bring here a bit of Ableton's reverb from A. Want to keep it kind of tight. We could also try the groove here on the kick. I think that works well. All right, great. So let's crack on with maybe just a little bit more drums, and then we can get stuck into, I think, to some hi-hats and things. But we're just kind of getting a nice little bit of a shuffly kind of groove going on. So let's carry on with that a little bit. So we might have a, so not quite what I was looking for on the hi-hat. We'll try this one for the moment, but we might switch that out. Let's get us going. Let's duplicate that out. Gives us an opportunity again to do some little phrase changes. So I'm always shaping my sounds right from the get-go, whether it's note length like I showed you, or a combination of the note length with the ADSR. That's giving us the ability to... So think about that. Don't just plonk your sounds down and just be done with it. Also with the velocity, you know, get some velocity in there, get things sort of happening and changing so that we've got this randomization. So let me just do something here because I kind of made a small mistake. Would have been easier to have done this earlier, but it's okay. So what we'll do is we'll just shift select all the notes that I haven't randomized the velocity of, and we're going to put a bit of velocity into those because I think the swung I chose, I'm going to check in a moment, was the one that actually didn't have any velocity as a part of the swing and groove, or groove, let's say. So I'm going to do this manually. Just come across here, so not affecting my ghost notes is what I'm doing there, leaving those ones alone. So in theory, all the ghost notes should be not highlighted. Looks good. Looks like I've managed to pull that off okay. And now I'm going to randomize all those other ones that were just straight full velocity. Pop those in like so. So now we've got a little bit of both going on. Adrian Dantes, you seem to make it simple how to create drums. For me, it takes some time to get something like that I like. I don't move as fast as you do, but yeah, I think it's sometimes like with this, do always think about samples are easy to hot swap out and change. So yes, sometimes I'm a little bit quick with the drums, but yes, I have been programming them there for a very long time as well. So I think that does help. That comes with time, but take your time. You know, it's important to get the groove you're looking for here. Just go check back in here. Yes, so the MPC doesn't have any velocity automatically. So I'm happy that I'm going to keep reminding myself to, you know, do the velocity part. We could add some here, like some 20%, the same as the other swings, but I'm kind of comfortable with doing that automatically myself. Let's have a bit of erosion on this, see what that sounds like. Now we could do lots of other fun stuff. We'll have a bit of reverb. Just to put it in the same room as the snare, same kit. So it's got a bit of ambience to it as well. Super simple, right? Nothing, we're not breaking any new fancy territory here, but we're just getting a nice groove going. Gotta be careful. I'm on the, someone might have spotted that. I'm on the wrong track. Much better. So I was on the kick drum, accidentally must have clicked over there for a moment. So what I was wanting to do, which sounds much better now, the erosion is on the hi-hat here. Now I'll just, you can hear big difference. You know, it changes that hi-hat immensely in the sense of, here it sounds very thin and kind of quite bright and thin. We could round off the EQ a bit on the top, but here we get a nice stereo width out of it and crunch, and I can kind of hear that. I hope you guys can hear that as well. So if we want to darken it a little bit, we can there, but I can tell you straight away, if we just use a quick mixing tool here and take a look, I can tell you that that absolutely has added some width to this hi-hat as well. So if we just grab ourselves the Ozone Imager and pop that down there, you can see the hi-hat over here. Let's turn off the erosion. All right, so it's spreading that a little bit with the wider noise here. If we go for the shorter noise, it stays pretty the same, but that's kind of give it a little bit of spread as well, which sounds quite nice. Okay. Going to open that back up a little bit. And let's just try a little bit of phaser maybe on here, or a flanger, just a little bit. So that gives it a little bit of movement. So let's leave it for now. We'll keep it straight. All right, so bass lines. Let's maybe go straight to there. We'll come back to percussion because I've got some ideas about making some percussion loops. And just while we're doing that, we'll do a quick bit of housekeeping here and label up our tracks. If you are here in the live stream with me, well, a very warm welcome to you, whether it's evening, morning, or afternoon like me. Hope you're having a great Sunday. Do feel free to say hello in the chat, and feel free to let us know, you know, where you're tuned in from, and if you've got any questions, then do drop those in the chat. So we might have, let's say, an operator bass to start with. Now we don't have any key or scale. We're going to get rid of that demo track for our levels earlier. We don't have any key and scale going at the moment. We've just got these 3 drum sounds, so now we can kind of start to think about that. Maybe we work in a white note scale today, which generally makes it a little bit easier perhaps to follow along. And let's have some A's as a note then, the root note. Let's be an A minor, shall we? So white note only scale in minor, starting on A. A bit carried away there. I want to keep going actually with this a little bit more, I think. So we have a little bit of a rhythm change there, could be nice. So we're in A minor, a fifth is the E, but we might bring that in into the next bar. And by the way, the sound is super raw, that's fine. We're just trying to get a nice groovy pattern here. Once again, note length, big difference. So play around with that, right? Get some note lengths into there. Let's also get some velocity change into here. Okay, so now let's bring it down. Nice. So all we're doing at the moment is we've just got a very simple operator patch, nothing fancy. It's just a sine wave with a filter. So let's now sort of tune it up a little bit. Let's start with the envelope. Do we want a really plucky? Do we want to try a different waveform? So all of these things could be really nice automating a bit. So let's maybe try something already on that a little bit. Slow it down. Let's leave the depth up, but we'll bring the offset around. So what we're doing is opening and closing this a little bit, like you can see here. And if we don't want that much movement, which we don't want it to close right off, now we can adjust this a bit, right? And if we offset the other way, you can see I open up to there, and then I'm closing down to there. So we're going to go around a little bit further. Further, bringing the depth down as well. So that could be interesting, right? Gives us a nice bit of movement in the bass there. We could also change our waveform. So it's less random, oh sorry, so it is random rather than less constant. Could be more groovy. Yeah, so I'm just going to bring up the percentage a little bit because I don't want to go too close. There's a sort of point where I like where it there sort of closes down, and if we want we can adjust that with the depth and offset, but you can also use the range up here. Just kind of get that range. There we go, somewhere like that. Again, maybe not even as closed as that. Okay, let's go to the filter. And let's bring it around, close it off for a second, and then let's bring up the envelope. Nice, so the filter envelope's making the filter open and close around the cutoff, and it's very plucky at the moment, which I kind of like. So you can see, depending on the filter shape, more closed, tighter, more pluckier, a little bit more open. So we could also have an LFO just moving this a little bit. Let's set it up similar to the other one. So now we've got a little bit of movement on this. It's creating a nice kind of modulating, groovy bass, right? So I kind of like that as the low bass. Let's maybe put it in a rack. Group it up, Command G or Control G. And let's make another layer to it. And maybe try and make a higher layer. A bass is going to be pretty important to this track. It's going to be pretty important to this genre. So we can get a nice kind of maybe high layer with the wavetable working with the lower bass together a bit. And we could even pitch this up a bit. But we don't want sort of to go into melodic techno territory. We're trying to keep this kind of nice and minimal house. So let's kind of work on this sound a bit. Could be monophonic. Let's give it a bit of unison, so it's kind of the wider layer. Let's put an envelope on the filter cutoff of the wavetable. Ah, that's the resonance. Let's try out some other shapes. It's quite nice. Also nice. So let's, after the wavetable, maybe control it a little bit with an EQ. We'll take a bit of low end out of this one. So it's giving us this nice kind of higher layer, right? We're sort of saying, operator, you do the lifting of the lower bass. the wavetable is giving us a little bit of extra grit. So let's work on that as well a little bit. Maybe add a little bit of color to it. So I quite like this resonance being quite high. So let's have that resonance maybe mapped to one of these LFOs. Let's maybe try the second one that's got a bigger range here. Give us some nice character, right? So I'm using the LFO that I've mapped to the operator because I like the kind of shape of it, how slow it is, also the range of it. That's going to give us some interesting movement over time as it randomizes. I'm just going to bring the top range down a little bit. Okay, we've also got a groove on here, so we're cooking there. Let's call this the bass. Just got to try these notes down one more octave, but I've got an octave down in my synth. Yeah, that's a bit too low. I could also have perhaps a little bit of delay on this wavetable layer. Let's try that. Adrian Dantas, it's amazing how well-placed modulation of synths adds movement and a result into more organic or live. Absolutely, it kind of gives it, completely lifts it up, and that's great that you brought that up, Adrian, because in this genre, I think modulation and movement is really important. Similarly to drums and groove, we want lots of kind of little bits of movement going on. That's kind of a bit of a part of the signature sound of this particular genre. So well brought up there. And we're not even going crazy, we've just got a little bit of movement on our filter cutoff, and on the resonance is quite a nice touch, I think. Similarly, a bit of fold. So let's have this fold, but we'll do an internal LFO this time in the wavetable, because we've got external ones, which is okay, but we can also use our lots of lovely LFOs we've already got here. And let's also have it moving the oscillator. Try some different shapes. Again, if we want that kind of random feeling, that could be nice. Slower or perhaps a bit faster. I could kind of listen to that for quite some time, really. I like the feeling of it. Let's just try these lower notes a little shorter. And that wavetable layer, it can be much quieter if you don't want it to take much away from that bass, right? Nice. So we've got a nice kind of bass, two-layered bass going on there, working away, lots of LFO, lots of movements, well, enough to kind of get a nice kind of feeling going on there. By the way, if you're here in the stream, new or coming back, you've been here before, do always feel free to say hello in the chat. Let us know how you're doing, and if you've got any questions, as I said, feel free to drop them in the chat. So what might we do next? Maybe we'll go for sort of something like a bit of a percussion layer here. Quick question, Adrian Dantas. When do you move away from the stock Ableton plugins and choose to pick Pigments or Serum? Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a fixed answer to that. I think it's sort of the main reason, I think, for having third-party plugins is often we have them because we're interested in the presets and the sort of sounds that they can make that we don't have in our Ableton stock library. But I think for me, Pigments, it has some... I'll pick on Pigments because I don't own Serum, but I think Serum's an amazing synthesizer. It's an amazing plugin. I'll pick on Pigments. Pigments has other types of modulation built into it that, let's say, Ableton doesn't. It also is a very powerful synth in the sense that you might load that up and you can do kind of, instead of operator and wavetable, you can do what operator can do in Pigments. You can also do what wavetable can do in Pigments. You can do what a granulator can do. You can add your own samples. It's incredibly powerful. So you can actually use all different types of synthesis inside of Pigments, whereas to do that in Ableton, we would be operator and wavetable and analog and granulator. So think about some of those units. They can actually handle wavetable synthesis, subtractive synthesis, granular synthesis, samples, and you can layer all those things in the same instrument, and they have different effects and they have different modulation possibilities. So I hope that helps a little bit answer your question. So, you know, I'm happy to do one day a complete track with just Pigments and do a stream with that. If you'd like to see that, let me know in the chat. But yeah, it's just sort of, you know, first of all, I think if you've got Ableton Live as a DAW, you should learn what you can do in Ableton, which is anything you really want to do. And those third-party synths, well, they do offer some extra things that we don't have here, but it's not that huge difference. Are they better? Not necessarily, but as I said, I think of it a bit like having a rack of guitars. You know, this guitar could do this one can do this tone, this can do that. All the different synthesizers, they just give us different ways we can perhaps go about, you know, making our tracks. So I hope that helps a bit. Let's crack on here. So let's maybe get a chord in the mix here. So we've now got a scale, we're in A minor. Let's get a bit of a chord happening. Let's start with triads, but we'll make it a much thicker chord. Maybe start with a 4-note chord. And let's have wavetable. I'm going to, again, mess around with the note lengths and the groove. Okay, that'll do for a start there. So we're just getting some nice kind of chords, having a chat with our bass line. Just picking a couple of different wave shapes here, just to get a bit of interaction there. And of course, now we're going to get some modulation into this patch as well. But if we play around with the release, you can kind of hear so that might be nice. Again, we could LFO that. We can, again, use one of our LFOs in here if we like. So let's do LFO 2. Let's slow it down. The only thing with this is I can't kind of see the movement. I know that it's opening that release amount up. I can kind of hear that. And if I go this way, it would be closing the release down. So you have to, it's probably a good thing, use your ears and really hear what it's doing to the sounds here, because you don't get the visual LFO that you do if you go back and use an external one, right? So if we map it like this, we kind of have to use our ears to hear what it's doing to this release amount. But it's doing that, it's opening it up. So if you feel it's easier to learn visually here, you could go and get ourselves from the effects, the external LFO. Go to the amp envelope, and then we're going to map here to the release. And actually we don't see it moving here either, which is just one of those things. So in this case, it's not really doing anything that we can't see this moving around. We could see it's modulated. So in this case, it's actually easy enough just to keep it in the synth itself. Nothing gained. But I'm just wanting to move that release a little bit. Just gives it a little bit of movement, that's all. But we're definitely going to get these guys moving around, so let's do that, and we'll do it with an external so you can kind of see what's going on there. So what I want here, slow that right down. Set our range bit here. Let's also have the release modulated as well. We could do it with another LFO if we like. Or what we can do is copy this one over, because I quite like the settings, and map that here. And what we want to do here is change the offset on the release a bit. Let's turn on our other filter as well. Right, just need to adjust my resonance a bit, don't want that as high. There's a lot of tweaking. And you'll notice I'm doing all of this. I haven't touched a reverb or a delay yet, but they're coming. Ciao días, muy buenas tardes, good afternoon. So we got this nice bit of movement happening here. Let's get back in the matrix, and we might have a little bit of movement on our wavetable as well. I'm going to use an envelope for that. Okay, so now let's give it a little bit of spatialness as well. Nice. Bit of delay as well. Let's get this little bit of processing on our operator just to make it a bit more power. Give it a little bit of raw. A bit of a DJing over on the master track here. Okay. So if we were low cutting the track and dropping it back in, how does it feel? Not too bad, just needs a little bit of work on some of the EQ work, but I think the chords are sounding pretty sweet here. And again, we got some nice movement in them. Let's EQ all this low end away, that'll help our kick and bass. So let's name that, that's our first sort of chord. Let's give the kick, it's very, very raw at the moment. Now I've got to watch my resonance a little bit in here at some point. We can adjust those, that's in the LFO. So this one's mainly the cutoff. So we could actually name that, that could help. So let's call this one cutoff LFO. This one over here, the one driving the resonance. So we just want to make sure that when it does its random moves, it doesn't get too out of hand. Oh, cut off, no. Res, let's call it res, LFO. Just bring the depth down a bit. So hopefully you boys and girls that are here can kind of hear how that modulation is really turning it, and Adrian Dunn has pointed it out, it's really turning it into a much more organic feeling, kind of cool sounding, you know, interesting moving layers, which with a genre like this, I think it's really important. We want groovy, we want kind of, you know, a nice feeling to it, but all of that, you know, we're not going crazy here with music theory and all that kind of stuff, but we want a nice kind of bit of organic depth and feeling to it, which I think we've got so far by what we're doing with all that sort of LFO action and envelopes and stuff. So let's get a bit sound designy now. We always like those moments. Let's get an empty drum rack. Let's see if we can come up with some sort of other interesting kind of layers here. Let's have a drum rack and let's grab some samples. Percussion samples is my thoughts here. Now we could do this a couple of ways actually. We could also have a percussion loop of some kind. Something with a bit of mixed percussion could be interesting. That we can perhaps have a look at that example in a moment and play around with that. But let's try a drum rack, and let's try some samples in the drum rack. Got lots of them in this pack here called Minimal Perc. So I might just grab a random bunch. Let me just, now let's just go from 1 to 30 there to see what that sounds like. We can always switch some around, drop that into there, like so. And let's go into the pattern for this. And let's do something a little bit unusual here as well. Let's maybe get like a polymeter going. So let's make our pattern bigger. So by that, we want to put like, let's say maybe one big MIDI note here. So let's maybe make that legato. And what have we got? 1 bar. And then let's turn off the pencil for a moment. And on a Mac, it's Command E. And you see it starts to split. And then I'm going to sort of split it so it's like in fifths or sevenths, so it's quintuplet or septuplet. It's going to mean that this pattern's a little bit different, right? In terms of, it's actually a polyrhythm, sorry, not polymeter. Always easy to confuse those. So we've got a bit of a different time signature. We've got 5 beats in a space where we normally have 6 if it's triplets, or 4 if it was in, yeah, just straight notes, right? So let's maybe keep going with the split. I think actually we don't need to go that. We'll go back actually. Let's just try that. Let's make the notes so that they're apart a bit, so they should re-trigger the instrument or the drums. So right now we've got this. Just this one sample, right, being triggered. But you get that interesting groove, right? And that's because of the 5 beats in a space where, as I said, we've typically got 4 or less. And these are half notes, I think. Well, they should be less than that. Let me just bring the grid down. We're talking about sort of like 8th dotted, more or less, as they currently are, which is okay. We could make them sort of 16th. We could also duplicate this. All right, so what we want to do is kind of access these other samples here, right? We don't want it stuck on that one sample. So let's bring in an arpeggio and pop that in front. And we're going to use the arpeggio to move up and down in the samples, and we can do that using the steps. That's our octave control. And we can use that in conjunction with the distance if we want. So let's mess around with that for a second. It's okay, but not quite there yet, right? So we could play around with those. We can also play around with the style of the ARP. So if we put that in random, then that would be interesting, because then it's really getting quite crazy here. Let's bring the steps down. You see we're starting to trigger some of the other sounds, but I quite like to do this a bit of a different way. So I'm going to leave the ARP in random, and I'll bring the steps and distance like that for a second. And I'm actually going to use, speaking of random, the random MIDI effect in the middle here. And I'm going to use the chance of that. With also the distance and the steps, right? We could also change the rate. Sounds pretty wild at the moment, but bear with me because it'll make some sense at the moment. But as you can see, we're getting much more through lots of the samples. And of course, these could be any samples really that we want here. And let's say if we put a note length effect in here as well, where have we got our note length here? So that could also be interesting. All right, so we've got this kind of pretty wild thing going on here. And again, you know, to be honest, everything that's happening so far, we could go back over to that library of samples. And if we don't like what we've got on the pads here, we could easily, you know, and this can be from anywhere in your library. It could be vocals, snapshots, one-shots, synths, one-shots, whatever you like, right? So let's grab a whole new bunch of these and we can get a fair few of them. Let's see how many we've got here. Like 100 almost, or over 100. Maybe that's a bit too many, but you know, we can populate all of that. We can also make this go bi-directional, so it will sometimes go up, sometimes down. So we're not going to leave it just like that. You get the idea, hopefully. So let's say we get stuck into a bit of LFO action now. So we can bring in an LFO and we could map that actually to the styles. Now you see how, I think I saw this recently in someone else's post in the comments. They wanted to map an LFO to the style change and they couldn't do it. What we need to do is take it out of the mod here to remote, I believe. And now, as you can see, it now will go through the different styles. So if you come across that, just make sure that you take it out of modulation mode and put it into remote. That's going to help you. Okay. Let's slow that down a bit. That is the style that's going on over there. Because I'm leaving it the depth full, it is pretty much going through all of them, which is pretty cool. Let's try over this page. And let's map the steps a bit. Same LFO. We could also do distance, let's try that. So I almost want it to be in the middle and going up a bit from there, but not as far as it's going. Getting there. So let's get that, which still is raw, let's get it recording into a new MIDI track. And what we want to do is capture a bit of this MIDI here. Yeah, it's interesting what it's doing already. It's got an interesting beat pattern going on here. It's triggering all these different samples. I didn't realize actually, well, that's happened because I added all those more samples that are both up and down from the original placing of the note. But let's try capturing some of the MIDI. It's going to be pretty wild, I would imagine. Before we do that, we need to tell the MIDI track, always helps, what it's listening to. And it needs to be listening to this track. Okay, now we should get some action. we can let that run for a while if we like. As you can see, it's getting quite random here and there. That will do. There's lots of MIDI there, right? And so what we're doing is just a bit of, as I said, it's a bit kind of chaotic at the moment, but it's deliberate. So bear with me, as I said, when we're doing this. Grutzi the dog at Adrian Dantas, it's very simple to make drum parts with a step sequencer. The trick is create one part at a time and keep each part simple. Okay, fair enough. Sorry, I didn't realize you were passing on some information there. All right, so let's put this MIDI back on the track there. We'll switch off the arpeggiator and the random. We just want the samples. Our LFO also we don't need. So now we've kind of got this MIDI clip with all this kind of, random sequence on it that we just saw a moment ago, which goes really, let's zoom out a bit, up and down all over the place here. And what we could do, we don't need all of it. It's kind of why I stopped it, because it could go on forever really. But we kind of could take some of this MIDI here. Doesn't really matter where for the moment. Maybe we'll say we'll loop this little section over here, right? And if we hit play now, that's kind of cool. It still might be a bit busy, right? It's kind of interesting for me. So what I could already do is put this clip down an extra copy here and just pop in, and I might crop this one so that I get rid of all the other noise that's going on the other sides. And the original one I'll just bring down here, and I'll mark it that it's the original recording, just so we know. And this was the original pattern, so we're not kind of using those too much anymore. But I'm just essentially bringing some selection of the MIDI into play. We could move them around on the samples, but we could also just simplify this a little bit. So by that, we could try a couple of things. One thing we could do, which could be fun here, is bring the chance lane in down the bottom here. And maybe there's one sound. Let's turn on this. So this sound here happens a lot right across this MIDI sequence. So let's grab that one in the chant and let's bring it down so that it only happens really very few amounts of time, 10% perhaps. So let's try that. Also this vocal, let's bring that down a bit. So by using chants, you could mute lots of these notes and just pick your favorite ones, but you can also kind of like end up listening back a bit and deciding which ones, you want to happen all the time. And now we've got sort of something a bit more unique, right? And again, as I said, we can make it a lot more minimal if we want just to have a few of these sounds, right? So another option would be, let me sort of walk you through what I was thinking, copy this down, and you could literally, zero it out and then just bring in, a few pieces. Of course, again, what we might do if we're going to do it this way though, is let's put everything, not that far. Let's go here, and now we're going to go back a bit. Put everything out of the chants for a moment, take all the notes out, and then zero them out. Now you might think you could have also just got a pencil and drawn around all the different samples, so there's lots of different ways to do this. It's just an interesting way, in my opinion, to get a bit of a different pattern, get yourself out of, perhaps something that you always do, and see what the results are. Here we've got lots of MIDI to play around with, we've got interesting positions of notes. We don't have velocity yet either, which we're going to make sure that we put in a moment. You can use note chants, as I said, like the last clip that I'm working on here. So that one, actually we'll put everything back in on that one. and we'll use the note chance on that one. So let's call that the chance. That was the chance clip. And this one here is sort of just a bit more kind of choosing your own. So let's call this the choose. And we just choose our own hits. But again, we could use the note chance as well if we like. Nice. Just simplify it. So I might just roll with that as a bit of extra percussion in the background, right? So that was the idea, just to get kind of something a little bit different, and then we could mess around with some effects adding on to that. Roots of the Dog, a great drum groove, just reading the comments, a great drum groove has 1 or 2 resolution beats that all other beats gravitate to, just as a melody has a root note. I learned this wisdom from the great Joe. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts there. Appreciate that. So let's process this a little bit. That is this new drum rack loop. So let's get some sort of EQ behind it. A little bit of percussion we've got now. Get rid of any low end we don't need. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of process it with a few effects just to get a bit of interest, even further interest to it. Now you don't have to do this, you can just leave the percussion loop as you like. But this could be a great way to make your own kind of weird effects from what we have. Now let's go to the chance one. So if you're looking to maybe render this to audio, we could find lots and lots of kind of pretty cool little effects parts, just adding sort of things like the corpus and the phaser behind it here. And even before we do those, the EQ is going to remain regardless of whether I do what I'm just playing around with. But I quite like a beat repeat in here actually also. Because that could give me some nice little variations on the beat. think I'm going to go back to the choose. Just keep that loop really kind of quite minimal. And for now, I'm going to process that with a little bit of echo. And a bit of reverb. And if we want to sort of, again, lots and lots of possibilities here. What have we got in the end? So lots and lots of possibilities. So it's kind of fun, you know, instead of just grabbing something out of a sample pack and dropping a loop on a track and saying job done, we've got kind of something interesting here. Lots of possibilities as a set of ways of taking it. I want to sort of keep going with the making this a nice music idea, but the thing I was doing before with the corpus and the flanger, the phaser, you know, I'd probably open up an audio track and I'd record lots of what I was messing around with into there, and we could find all sorts of kind of nice little pieces of effects and things that we could use in our track from setting up an effects chain. I think I'll make something that has a bit of that feel to it next, actually. So instead of a pad, we'll do another kind of sound designy part for this track. Let's call this for now Perk, and we'll just do again a little housekeeping, a little pause, put that into there. Back over in our drums, they're feeling maybe a little neglected, so we could maybe have an open hi-hat as well. Over in here I think we've got some good sounds, some 808s. We have an open in there, we've got a closed. This guy. Maybe pitch down. Bit of reverb. Let's also give that erosion. And any low ends we're going to remove. Nice. Okay, so I have this tambourine loop over here. I could show you another way in a moment. Let's see how we go for time. I want to sort of wrap this up in a half an hour or so. I'm sure you've got plenty of things to do like me, but I hope you're enjoying the stream. And if you are here and you're new or coming back to the stream, do always feel free to drop a comment, say hello, let us know where you're tuned in and listening from. If you've got a question, drop it in the chat there. I'll do my best to answer it. We are doing today a bit of micro house, minimal house vibes in Ableton Live, stock plugins, some samples, a little bit of sound design type stuff. This genre sort of is a genre that you can experiment with, and a lot of the great tracks, the cool stuff, it's about little happy accidents maybe, but there is sound design as a part of it, because fundamentally it's a lot of drums and groove, bass, but we're not heavily working here with, you know, lots of harmony, chords and melodies. Perhaps that, you know, some styles of micro house and minimal do have some of those elements, but it's not necessarily what the genre is all about, right? It's about nice kind of funky, groovy dance floor tune. So let's try another experiment here. So it could be nice to have a pad kind of here, because I did want a little bit of music in here, and so far I've got these chords and a wavetable that I made to do that. But let's try something that we can do, and this is going to be a bit sound designy, but let's try it. We can use echo, and echo kind of in its second page or third page, sorry, it has a noise engine, and if we turn this on, it generates noise by itself, right? Like so. And what you can do is you can get that noise and you can make it move with the morph over here. So you can make it like modulate, move around a bit. Now that will keep playing forever. If we want to take it out, we can just kill the dry wet. But then we've got this kind of noise here, which could be interesting to do something with it. Ignacio Guerrero, buenas tardes, good afternoon. Thank you very much. Hope you're enjoying the stream. All right, so let's get this little bit of noise from echo. We'll try something with it. Let's try and turn it into a pad kind of idea, something like a bit of a chord perhaps. So what we could do is maybe have an LFO over here, and that could be mapped to the morph. Slow it down. We might come back to that. We could also try it again. So if you're ever looking for noise, you know, nice bit of crackle, pop, bit of atmosphere in your track, you can do that with the echo. As I said, you might want to automate the dry wet though, so that you can take it out when you don't want it anymore, because like I said, it's a constant noise generator that's just going to keep going like that. But what we want to try actually, a bit of resonator on here, like so. So we're kind of using that noise to get, in this case, a note, and in this case, a C2 at the moment, right? So we could have an A2, we're in A minor, so it could be good to use the root, or an A3. We could leave it on C though. C is in our scale, it's the third of the scale that we're in. But maybe we come up a little bit, so all the white notes would work. Let's just have a listen. So we've got the basic bit here of a bit of a tone, right? And then what we can do is we can turn this into a chord, right? By effectively, so let's put this with the musical stuff. So let's say now, if we start bringing up some of the other pitches, we can start getting a chord. So let's put a root note here. So let's say again C2, and then we're going to go to the E here, which is 3 semitones up. We could go 4 to the F. And we're going to bring up the next one. Then the next one. Let's try the gain here a bit. So all that noise from the echo that's being modulated by the LFO is now making a chord over here with the resonator. So it's a bit different to a pad, right? But we've got this kind of 4-note chord effectively, and if we change the root note, at the moment it's a major chord, so if we bring that interval to a 3rd, we could also be this direction. Nice. So let's get more LFO action in here. I'm happy with the LFO moving this around. We could also play around even more over here. Get some wobble in as well. More movement. Let's go up a little bit higher so we're not too low. So I like somewhere in between. Maybe I'll stick with A2 for the moment. All right, so let's get some LFO action. Start with the filter frequency of the resonator. Let's keep it a bandpass or notch. So a really nice slow LFO, moving our notch filter. Let's try another LFO. This time let's map it to the gain of the root node of the resonator, let's say. Nice. So you can have this note synced or a little bit unusual like I've got it at the moment, which is creating its own little sort of rhythm here. But it kind of comes up with an interesting kind of cool little part, right? Let's note sync it. Actually, I think I prefer it in frequency, but I'll just try and get it a little more in time. So let's open up our nice little menu, and let's do that also with the 5th. Let's do it also with the octave. Let's bring it right down. Pretty cool from echo's noise, right? So again, we're just trying out a few things here, getting something out of something unexpected, or perhaps not so obvious. Instead of plonking again chord progression there, trying to do a pad, we're kind of getting a chord, but in a new way. Get an EQ onto this, clean out any low end we don't need. And that's going to bubble away really nicely in the background there, moving constantly. Let's call it the Atmos for now. Probably could do also just with a little bit of compression. Just to keep it from jumping around too much. I can hear that kind of level rising up and down, and that's got bits to do with the LFO, which we can also kind of like tone down a little bit if we like. El pingüino, sorry, I'm just juggling with my Spanish at the moment. El pingüino especial. Muchas gracias. I think we've got some Spanish speakers in the house, if I'm right. Ignacio, also el pingüino, the penguin. All right, but just remember here, as I said in the end, with the echo, it's going to constantly move. So when you want to take it out, just remember to take the dry wet out. So at some point when I'm arranging this track, or maybe I'll record it to audio, right? And then we won't have to worry about that, but it will just constantly keep on doing that unless we take the dry wet out. So just keep that in mind. Either automate that. So I reckon we got room for maybe another chord. Let's try and work on that. So we're in A minor. So maybe what I'll do is copy this chord track over onto here so I can actually see what I've already got. And what I'd like to do is have something that has a conversation with this. So we are in A, and that was the root chord. So let's maybe select all these notes. And let's come up to the fifth, which is E, right? Yep. Just make sure we've got all of those, which we do. Could also bring the top note up one. And then let's have this sort of in between. Hang on, we'll undo that. We'll just go back. And we'll put all these notes up here and we'll zero them out. So we kind of know where they are. We want a little bit of a, keep doing it. Let's go back. Want a bit of a conversation here if we can. Okay. Well, let's just loop this up smaller. Well, actually, el pingüino, yo hablo español, pero hay días cuando puedo hablar bien y otros días un poco mal. Creo que hoy es un día sufren un poco, pero bueno, también cuando mi cabeza es en la música, fallo un poco en el tema de hablar, pero nada, perdone para mi mal pronunciación, espacial, tengo perfecto, pero pingüino mal hecho, pero, pero gracias. Otro día dar un clase en español. Okay, let me try one more. Now back. Okay, let's try that with a groove. Not quite. This one. That's better. Okay, so these should be speaking a bit together. Let's also try this down now. Sounds all right. Bit of sub perhaps, make sure it doesn't get in the way of the bass. Yeah, that sub's working nicely. It's thickened it up. Something also fun on here, which I'm hearing, could be interesting. There's a gate on here. Just sidechain it to the closed hi-hat. Right, so you could get a really nice kind of groovy layer to that atmosphere as well if you wish, so just taking it a completely different direction. I think with the resonator, might just repitch this one a bit. So that's a really nice layer for me with the gate. Right, and I've just used the sidechain of the closed hi-hat to respond to that, which I know the closed hi-hat pattern is a really nice, fast, kind of groovy pattern. But really, you could also use the bass line here if you wanted to sort of wobble with the bass. So if we go in here, we could also sidechain it to the bass. Quite a nice result, I think. If we turn it off, we're back to our... So, just came across my mind that could work quite nice with the gates. Not quite happy with this chord though at the moment. I think that's better, a little bit more minimal. Funnily enough, we're writing minimal. Probably have another one here. Okay, back on the gate. I do quite like the gate. Probably should put it up to a vote, but gate or no gate. Or maybe we can even split it down the middle, and that is automate the gate on or off and actually have the gate off and then it comes on automation wise. Just remember this, as I said, the echo is always there unless we kill the dry wet, because I've made this layer out of the echo's noise, which is morphing around. So I'm going to sort of start wrapping up there. It's been great to have those of you who've dropped comments, and of course those of you who I don't see in the comments, I don't know, but I hope you've enjoyed the stream, of course, and found this one interesting, and you've taken away some tips and tricks and ideas. It's been nice for me to blow out a bit of rust. I haven't made a sort of minimal micro kind of tune for a little while, but I do have a background, a strong background in that music, having produced a couple of sample packs for underground sounds in minimal, and also my own in abstract sounds. Starting with Doorless House Music, great to have had you on board. Banana Roch, Adrian Dantes as always, Chavi Diaz as always, Grutzy the Dog, nice to meet you here, and thanks for your comments. Ignacio Guerrero, muchas gracias. También El Pingüino Espacial, nice to have you on board as well, and apologies for my poor Spanish earlier, but I think I've got my, got it back. So let's do a quick little recap and then we can kind of wrap things up. So what have we got? Let's do a bit of labeling here. We've got, this one should be chord 2, and let's give that more of a normal color for me on those kind of sounds. Perc is as it would be color wise. Bass is normally rojo. Let's bring that over there. And closed hi-hats are normally in the yellow territory, snares are green. I have to kind of do these things, and my OCD will obviously be having a chat to me later on this evening, and I won't be able to sleep properly. I'm sure some of you will understand. All right, so let's do a little cleanup. And these guys and girls are normally sort of that color. All right, so kick drum, nice beefy 808 sound, a little bit of drum bass on it, very raw still. The bass was interesting, I think. It's got 2 layers to it. It sounds quite cool. So we've got a nice sequence going on. But what we've got is an operator doing the lifting in the low. Just a simple operator with a filter envelope. Nice kind of plucky sounding operator. And then we've got this wavetable on top, which is doing lots of nice movement, and it's a bit wider. It's got some delay on it. It's, you know, adding a nice layer on top of the operator, so they work together in tandem. Got a nice 808 snare, nice closed hi-hat pattern as well, nice groovy one, erosion on there to get it sounding sweet. Similarly, a nice open 808. So we've got an 808 kind of good 808 sounds in here, making the drums mainly. I made this percussion layer, could have gone a lot of directions, to be honest, how we went about that. But again, I've just created something that is a bit unique, and it's got plenty of processing on it, and it's flicking through some different samples in this rack of random samples, essentially. But it's giving us a nice perc layer in the back. And then I did chord 1, which is this kind of nice plucky chord progression. Again, custom wavetable here. Lots of movement going on with LFOs, working the filters around, cutoff and the resonance, just giving us this kind of nice tone. And then another chord, just been working on more recently. Sorry, this one over here. Stimuli, a bit more plucky. And then finally, I've just kind of put together this atmosphere droney type track, which was fun to do. It's all about echoes, noise with a resonator, turning it into a chord. This is actually a chord here that's making that noise. turn into a chord, which kind of, as I said, I think is fun. And if we add the gate to it, a super cool sound that could be used in many tech house, micro house, minimal house, just gating it. And I've gated it to the bass. It also had it gated to the closed hi-hat before as well, which works because they're nice kind of fast punchy patterns. So all together, needs a bit of a mix down as well, like as in what levels are doing what lifting. I think I quite like the track mostly like that. This is the layer I would work on a bit more to get fit, because I think this is a track in itself there. And I think I've got a vocal somewhere that I put as well. Could be fun to try this in here as a bit of a vocal idea.
So to create what you really care for, first and foremost, what you want is well manifested in your mind. This is what I want. Is that what you really want? You must look at it, because any number of things in your life you thought this is it. The moment you reach there, you realize that's not it. So what is
similarly, that needs processing, but could.
First of all, we must explore. Once that is clear, and we are committed to creating, now there is a continuous process of thought in that direction. Once you can maintain a steady stream of thought without changing direction, definitely this is going to happen in your life, or you will definitely manifest reality.
Yeah, even this would be really fun to work with actually. Yeah, so plenty of inspiration there. That little piece there could turn into something really cool, could turn that into an effect, use it like it is, turn it into a pad, all sorts of fun stuff. So thank you very much for joining me in today's stream. As I said, it's been good banter in the chat there. It's been nice to have you on board. If you're watching this back on replay, well, I hope you also enjoyed the stream. As always, when I can, obviously YouTube spends a moment to analyze the stream. Normally tomorrow, I will stick a card here at the end screen with a follow-on video suggestion of what I think you should watch next if you've enjoyed this. There's plenty of videos on the channel, and I will point you in the direction of one that would be a good one to follow, watching this one and jump onto that one next. As always, a very small thing to ask, I think, is if you do enjoy the content on this channel and you've enjoyed today's stream, you know, do give the video a thumbs up, drop a comment, share it with a friend, and do obviously consider hitting the bell or subscribing to the channel so you can stay up to date when the next videos come out. And yeah, join the community. It's a good community we have going on here, as you can see if you keep an eye and join in the chats each week. So next Sunday, live streaming, 3 p.m. Central Eastern Time. We'll do it all again, and it'll be all things fun, Ableton Live, perhaps a track from scratch, perhaps a bit more teaching, you know, let's see. I'm sure if you need or want to see something in particular, also drop that in the comments. Adrian Dantes, thanks to you. Muchas gracias, El Pingüino. Muchas gracias también. I'm glad you enjoyed. Thanks a lot. Let's do it again next week. Take care, everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your Sunday. Over and out. Bye. See you later. Ciao.